Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and thank you for coming to the PatentSight Summit 2020 today. Experience the second session of the day together with Kristen Moore from Electrolux. Kristen, also thank you very much for joining us.
It's a great pleasure.
Before we get started with the presentation, let me cover a couple of housekeeping points. During the presentation, you'll have the chance to ask questions by using the GoToWebinar panel. There's a questions tab there where you can send questions to the moderators. As a follow-up to this session, we will also send an email with the handout from Kristen's presentation. And I would greatly appreciate if you would stay in the GoToWebinar panel once the session has closed, because then you'll be redirected to an online survey where we want to collect some feedback on the presentation from you. Kristen Moore, who's joining us today for the second session, is the head of group patents at the team Germany at Electrolux. Kristen comes with a unique technological background combining both life science and technology. The product strategic and business-oriented management of a patent portfolio is one of his core drivers. Its engine, its continuous strategic exchange and alignment of product lines, R&D, and IP responsibility. Thereby, Kristen enables a sustainable and future-oriented patent portfolio management, which secures both freedom to operate and, more importantly, market shares and profitable growth, and in parallel provides impulses for innovation. Key is thereby to be perceived as an IP business partner rather than a patent lawyer. Kristen will be talking about the transformation of the in-house role towards an IP business partnership. And if you believe it or not, this world is faster than before. If you believe this world is faster than before, you may be wrong. However, the vast amount of information on the one side and the shorter time to market and faster market penetration of products on the other side are only few of the challenges of traditional IP counseling. Kristen gives some insights on how he became a business partner for his stakeholders rather than just bothering to be a patent attorney. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to you, Kristen. Very much looking forward to your insights.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's a great opportunity. Actually, we should be in Bonn now. Enjoy the great weather and the great spring. Now Corona changed our plans a bit. I have quickly browsed through the audience, and it's great that you all joined for this short session of some interesting, hopefully, and also some funny things which I would like to share with you. There are two basically unexpected special guests. One is Thomas from WebGo. We should be in a fireside chat very soon in Berlin, which was cancelled due to COVID. And Stina, my new boss, who will start soon. And we should meet in Sweden, in Stockholm, which we also don't do with COVID now. Great that we can touch base on that way. Hopefully you enjoy the next couple of minutes. I was told I should switch off the camera and then share the screen with you so that we save a bit of the bandwidth here. So enjoy, and we collect your questions and then have a short question and answer session in the aftermath. So many clicks to be performed. Hopefully I stay within the call here. So, is my screen visible? Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is.
Good, perfect. Then we start. So, I was perfectly introduced here with the nice words from Martin, and maybe I quickly introduce also the company. The people which don't know it, Electrolux is a company which particularly focuses on household appliances, and we have a very, very diverse product portfolio, and we are active in a lot of different markets, and this makes the in-house counseling here very challenging. You see also that we have a great focus on Europe and North American based on sales, however, also increasing sales in Latin America and also APAC. And basically the company has separated strategically into 3 areas, namely the taste, care, and the well-being, where we would like to provide you with increased experiences. And with this transformation of the company from a very traditional product producing company to a more consumer focused company, we also have some challenges which we face in the IP field. So this is something which you see in a lot of textbooks. So business strategy, intellectual property, and R&D, they work hand in hand. They create an interface and exchange mutually interests and strategy. Unfortunately, what I realized is that we as patent attorneys, as highly skilled people, that we are not really recognized like we should. Now the film should start, actually. I try it like this. We tested that, actually. Okay, then we skip that. Actually, what I see is that we, as patent attorneys, take one of the longest educations in comparison to our technical colleagues, etc. And we are the crown of mankind. Of course we are. And then we realize that we actually are not well perceived like this. Our contribution, our work, everything. And what we call that is a bit the lack of IP awareness, which we face. And actually the video is one which in a funny way shows that our self-perception sometimes does simply not fit to how we are aware by our business partners. And these slides I have bluntly stolen from Bo Hayden from Gothenburg CIP, because he said, look, maybe the reality is something like that. Yeah, the business is relatively disconnected from you as the IP professional. If at all, then you are perceived like a little add-on to technology and R&D departments. And then even worse, there is a black hole which distracts you and keeps you in the windmill of office actions, etc. And this is a bit the situation which you find today in many of the companies. You are kept busy with administrative work, while you are distracted actually from the great business strategy, which actually should comprise your IP strategy as one of the key components. This is at least what our self-understanding would be. And we have analyzed this a bit. This is really sad that the videos don't work well. Let's try again here. Okay, but we will share them in the aftermath. So what our understanding after analyzing this situation was in the team a bit is that we have to change our attitude. We cannot change the attitude of our key stakeholders tremendously on all the sides at the same side. Maybe it's us which are part of the problem, and in turn which can form part of the solution. So what I did when I was starting to head my team here was we set up a clear strategic goal. And this was basically the 3 things which you see here. First of all, we realized that we have to act more sustainable if it comes to our monetary and timely resources. Yeah, it's time and money which matters. And it's actually a bit our decision how we can spend them. And this we would like to do a bit more sustainable. At the same time, we realized, thanks to a young and engaged patent engineer who joined us from R&D departments, she could very well review that our perception on the outside is really not, or is far away from optimal. So one of our strategic aims was that we really want to increase that. So how are we perceived by the other side? And then, of course, in a company like Electrolux, where my team basically is active with its portfolio in more than 20 countries, we also must improve a bit our global mindset. We truly must think more global and also administer our key stakeholder management, our portfolio management in a more global mindset. Having said this, we also realized that something which is also part of the textbooks is actually applicable also to patent management. This is the project management triangle, which everybody who has taken a course in project management knows. The size and the scope of the project, the time which you need to fulfill the task and the project, and the resources which you have, they are in an equilibrium. And if you change the one or the other, it will influence the others, or you have to compensate with the others in order to keep the quality at the same level. And then there is also a conclusion. Unfortunately, you cannot change all at free will. So maybe your IP department doesn't decide on its resources, headcount, and budget. Maybe the number of work is much coming from the outside, from the R&D activities or increased office activities. So all of this must be understood in order to get forward. And then a short introduction to how we are set up. This is basically my team, and it's only a few. It's Christian, Richard, and Felicitas as the patent attorneys in the direct team, Steffi as the patent engineer. We have one business assistant, and then we have a central hub where we have further assistant power for handling the office actions, and regional attorneys which secure that in their regions the project management is run forward. And with that team, we handle a portfolio with about 700 families and more than 2,700 cases in, at the moment, roughly more than 20 countries. Well, what really changed was that we thought about how we deal with our resources. And one key learning here, which is not rocket science, but which just strictly has to be applied, is that you start with a real key stakeholder management. So we have done an exercise and we just looked at who are the people which are really interested in our work. This can be a project leader. This can be, however, also the senior vice president of R&D, and how much power and influence they have on our work. And by this, we characterized really the few people which we call the promoters, which we really want to manage more proactively and closely. And believe it or not, we have a list. We have a list of people, and if an email comes in from these, it will be dealt with priority, and you will get an answer within a couple of hours. And this changed tremendously our way of approaching people also, and in turn, believe it, how they approach and perceive us. A relatively simple thing which you can do with your teams in a half-day workshop, actually. Just map the people and your hierarchy within the company and deal with them accordingly. This helped a lot. And then, of course, it is a question of how you deal with these people. And we learned as one feedback that patent attorneys bother us with too many details, and they ask more questions than they actually give answers. So my learning was simplify the things and try to give answers. And here's just a bit of collection of what I found here, what was interesting. So what is a patent? If I start a workshop, this is the first question. And the answers from the starting student up to upper management are so diverse, you cannot believe it. So what is a patent? And I think that the simplest answer which you can give is it's a right to say no, so you can forbid something. And if you get this message transferred, then it's already a great achievement, actually. It is a right to prohibit others to do the claimed invention. However, if you talk to business, you adapt your answer and you say, well, what do you do with it? You can control market shares if you apply it more to achieve exclusivity. However, if you talk to R&D, then you say, hey, I created for you access to technology. Otherwise, it would be blocked, or access to market. And this coined a bit the attitude of how we communicate and how we communicate the daily work which we do. You see, I've collected a bit the pictures here also, just to give you a rough understanding of what I mean with that, and I try to indicate from where I've stolen it. I always indicate the last source. Don't know where these guys have taken it from. This is something which I implemented now since 1.5 years together with my colleague Richard particularly, where we apply a relatively simple model, which also coined our way forward. This has nothing to do with strategy. It's basically a tool, a tactics tool, which we can apply to get faster decisions. Because one other thing we cured is a bothersome decision making. You see, It's relatively simple, A, B, C. We now even have D, where we just get quicker decisions on how to divest something in regular prunings. The idea here is you must give all assets a reasoning. How do you decide if you file a patent? Actually, we tried to explain problem solution approaches all over, and we were always very frustrated because you actually never had success in getting this really transferred as a knowledge. But then I learned from Roberto here, who is now the head of IPR at Nestle, that you can actually translate the whole content of a patent application into very, very simple questions. And I'm very thankful that he shared that with me. And I'm applying this now, and we see that it is making really good efforts. So you address R&D with the right questions, and then you will get the answers which you look for. And you can make this even a bit more sophisticated here. What is in the claim? If I send an application out to my R&D people, they started to look at the figures. We tried to get their attention to what is actually claimed and explain that a bit. And we have built here 6 blocks which we apply. You can apply the rating. We do it more as a guideline of what to discuss. What is actually in the fence which you want to forbid? Can you detect it? What is the merit? If we want to be a consumer-driven company, maybe we can decide whether the merit is more technical and thus maybe evaluated simply with money or easier manufacturing. And on the other side, whether it's something which the consumer really sees, what is a differentiator. And of course, this is one entry where you also can say, are we actually using it? Can we ever use it? And so forth. And then in the end, you lead that also to a discussion about what the strategic position is. Together with my colleague Tore and Martin from AVA, we have also worked a bit on how we can make this even more lean, related not only to single portfolio assets, but also to really business scenarios. And we found that these 3 pillars here is a very good base for discussion. Then in the end, you look at the business and you look at the particular scenario and you define a bit what are the drivers here, what are the unique selling points which you would like to address. So how the market is predicted to be. And then in the middle column, you identify a bit what is needed from a technical perspective, which access to which technologies you actually need. And then the third is your part. And you must understand what the landscape is and how your own portfolio particularly looks like. Also find a way to deliver this to your key stakeholders. And then in the end, you can decide together based on the pillar assessment, which actions are actually on the table, which you can take in which countries to address a particular business scenario. This is, for example, an example where you can see which question we ask, what we actually want to have. And this scenario is a very monodimensional one. So on the left side, you see maybe a market situation which we had in 2018, and we are not in the game. The market is 600 million euro, and it's predicted to grow 1.5 times during the next decade, next couple of years until 23. So now your product line comes and say, hey, and you want to be in the part of the game here with 20%. So one example on how you can build up a strategic business case for support with IP is, if this competitor 3, for example, has 50 patents at the moment, then these 50 patents are rights to say no against your shares, right? So this is the lever what he creates against your shares. And by such simple explanations, you can also explain to the business that if you really want to mitigate this whole risk, you should not know what you are using your patents for, but how relevant they are against competitor 3, because this is the lever which you want to create. So in this scenario, if you, for example, want to mitigate the full risk, you might need about 40 patents of the same average value, average quality. This is, of course, an assumption which we made here to simply visualize how we understand IP. Well, where comes PatentSight into play? We have supported all of these strategic considerations with analytics softwares like PatentSight. We have created searches for interesting module areas, i.e. technical areas which we are interested in. And I would like to share one example, which is the ventilation unit, which covers, for example, hoods, but also the ventilation systems in ovens. And by simply applying the search, you get with PatentSight a handy tool here where you can simply see who are the main players from a global view. And we found with this search string more than 50,000 patent families, which are registered for about 2,000 assignees. So with this vast information, the question is, how can you deal with? And we decided to do the following approach. We asked our R&D people, who are the relevant players we should particularly look at? And they named 16, which are either competitors or relevant suppliers. And already by the comparison, you see that there are some players which hold interesting portfolios, which are caught by these search strings, which they didn't name, which could mean they missed it or they have a reason for it. If you compare not only one of these assessments, but more, the next number, namely how many of these 16 competitors are holding actually part of these more than 5,000 families, so that the number which you caught, this was for us a very interesting indication how dense the field with our direct competition or suppliers is. And then, of course, you can do nice things like showing the portfolio size over years. And you see, for example, here, relatively easy based on one search, that in that particular field, there's really play action on the table, which means that, for example, within 1 year here, a Chinese company, Fotile, has created a portfolio which is bigger than the one of BSH, which is actually the glass premise. So this is data from last year. I have just rechecked today, and they now really have bypassed BSH. You also see that over the last 10 years, 5 years here, BSH, for example, has constantly built up portfolio, and then Chinese competitors like Nokia have followed. You can show that in a cake, and with these data, we then, of course, can look at quantity of patent portfolios. And then, of course, there is also the possibility to look a bit into quality with the algorithm of PatentSight. And you can also see that besides the rare purely portfolio size comparisons by the citation patent asset index, you can also estimate a bit how relevant, at least by citations, these portfolios are considered. And this is an interesting database which we use more and more to evaluate the landscapes around us and then plan respective actions. However, also interesting is that we invested a bit in visualizing this to our key stakeholders, and we made a really comprehensive slide deck, for different regions, like for Europe, showing them particularly what is the European situation looking like. How is the velocity of filings per competitor per year? You can see, for example, if there is one who is steadily building up portfolio or whether it's coming basically from a one-time workshop. And of course, we have then made a slide deck which is the same, but for other regions. So basically, I'm sitting on a slide deck now of more than 500 slides, which are populated basically automatically. And depending on which interaction partner I have, I can draw it out and say, hey, I'm talking to APAC, etc. And I can tell you that these efforts are really worth it, because with these data, you can approach these guys and get into discussions, say, hey, have you seen that? Do you know Fotile? What do you plan to do with them? Or what is the situation in the market? And actually, all the efforts are paying back now, because in the end, we could engage into very interesting discussions with our key stakeholders by doing this. And they got lots of interesting strategic information, which then in the end is, for me, a starting point of the journey on how we transform our windmill attorneys into real business partners, because now we are in discussion. And that's where I would like to end today.
Thank you very much, Christian. Really insightful. I enjoyed it very much. And I also see that you have changed it a little bit compared to last week and added even more information there, but I'm really glad. You were talking about the change in perception of the IP department. That started with the realization that you guys have to change, right, in order to become a business partner. It sounded a little bit less like you were being pushed, but more like you created that yourselves. Have you seen now that there is growing demand from business partners to engage with you? And how's that playing out for you? Is it now too much work, or tell us a little bit about that?
Good point, yeah. Yes, you make yourself more available. And this is stressful, particularly in the meeting management.
Mm-hmm.
However, I took an interesting journey. As you introduced me, I was starting in life sciences. I made my PhD actually in virology, which makes me a super semi-professional today. But the IP awareness in life sciences, particularly in pharma, is much higher. Also, your counterparts are different. And I was used to do patent work on a more intense level and with much more foresight than then if you go into really a traditional product producing company like Electrolux is. The drivers are different, and IP maybe is also not the main driver in this business. And therefore you have a bit of difference also in the IP awareness. So for me, this pays back by quality in my daily work. This is what I would answer to you, Marco.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spirit why you drive to work every morning. If you just want to tick off files, then this is not where I see myself within now and also not in the future.
Let me pick up a question from the audience here. Is your group also involved in the licensing of patents, and has that changed as well with the new perception?
Yes to both. We are involved in the licensing. However, we also have a very competent IP legal department. So we have separated a bit the legal from the patent. And of course, we then collaborate closely together. And yes, this changed also the way how we address these with more targeted license-in approaches and also a different way of negotiation, of course, yeah.
Okay. Christian, thank you very much. I know from our conversations the last couple of weeks, we probably could go on for like 2 hours now, and I'd like to take you to that boat cruise and enjoy a couple of nice drinks. However, we're reaching the end of our slot here today. Once again, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I can also see from the sheer mass of questions that this has piqued quite some interest in the group. Let me also add here for the audience that we will continue the PatentSight Summit presentations next week with a presentation from C.G. Moore, a partner at US law firm McBee and Moore, on the evaluation of M&A targets utilizing PatentSight. And 2 weeks out from now, we'll be listening to the head of IP from the Heraeus Group, Thomas Spernert, on utilizing the custom fields in PatentSight, which I think, Christian, could also be very interesting for you guys at Electrolux with all the additional information that you put in. We can talk about that for sure. And then also a presentation from Professor Dr. Bowman Hayden, who will give us an update on the academic view on IP. And with that, I would like to close the first day of the PatentSight Summit 2020, which is for sure an interesting experience being an online event now for the first time. Christian, thank you again very much. And also thanks to the audience for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. Bye.